Hi, my name is Whitney, and I'm with the Composting Committee for Sustainable Saratoga. And today I want to talk about composting. What is it? Why is it important? And how do you set up an easy system in your own home? All right, here we go. So, why is composting important? All right, so number one, it reduces our impact on the environment. Most people don't realize it, but about 25% of what's actually thrown in your trash can indeed be composted. Number two, it improves our soil. It increases the natural nutrients in the soil. It feeds the creatures that are in the soil. It defends against diseases and toxins. And it also increases the amount of water retention that you have in your soil, which improves what you're gardening. Number three, it saves our resources. So when you use it as a top layer on soil, it helps so that you don't have to use as much water and you don't have to use as much mulch or fertilizer, which also coincides with number four, saving money. So anything from your garbage bill to your water bills, anything you spend money on gardening wise, mulch, fertilizer, there you go. And number five, which has been really fun for me, is it's an opportunity to get your kids involved with gardening and really helping to increase their awareness on the 4 R's: reusing, recycling, reducing, and refusing. So my kids like to, they're a little bit more aware of what goes in the compost versus what goes in the landfill. And they see the process of a banana peel breaking down, and then they have the end product, which is compost. And it's an amazing process to see for me, so even more so for them. And it can also teach them a lot about science. So biology, chemistry, physics, you can go really as in depth with it as you want, depending on their age. So really, it's a small investment for a large impact. And it's easy, doesn't need a lot of space, and you can make it as high maintenance or as low maintenance as you want. All right, what is compost? Compost is a natural aerobic process, so it does need air, of recycling organic materials back into the soil. So I like this picture because when I go on a hike and you feel the soft ground of the leaves, that's nature's way of composting. And you see when you really look deeper into the ground, you see all the little teeny tiny particles that go into making that ground so soft. So it's just the natural decomposition. All right, FBI, this is what helps with that decomposition. And this is really crucial to having a good, healthy compost bin. So FBI, you need fungi, which is the mold and the mushrooms and the yeast. Those helps to release the nutrients. Bacteria, which is single cell microorganisms that do most of the decomposition work. So you eat and produce this heat. And then you need the invertebrates. So those are the little creatures without backbones. So the worms, the roly-polies, millipedes, beetles, spiders, mites, all of that. Why they are essential in your compost bin is because they burrow, and which creates air pockets. Their poop actually creates additional fertilizer, and it can become food for microbes, which are those smaller bacteria and fungi. And that helps to grow larger populations of bugs, which increases the breakdown, makes it a little bit faster. The invertebrates can also break down larger pieces of food into smaller ones, which is good for the fungi and bacteria. So those are really essential and key. All right, this is the important stuff, what to compost. And really, when you say what to compost, most everything can be broken down with time. But the goal to a good compost site is to not have animals, not to have anything that's going to potentially kill other plants if you use it. So this is what I use. When you're thinking of compost, remember the 1 to 3 ratio. Super important. to having a good balanced compost bin that doesn't smell and doesn't attract animals and breaks down at a good rate. So 1 part green, 3 parts brown. And this is just a general guideline. I don't measure anything. I just usually put way more brown in than I do green. And you don't have to be particular about it. Just I think it's a pretty loose process, honestly. So 1 part brown, 3 parts green. So the green group, this is your nitrogen. So these are the wet, heavy, um, they rot quickly, they get stinky really fast. So, and usually they're green or have some color to it. So veggies, food scraps, eggshells are a really good one, fresh grass clippings, coffee, and if you use a coffee filter, throw that into aquarium water, the algae and plants, chicken and horse manure because they are herbivores, so that type of manure is okay, and pet and human hair and wool. Usually I would think human hair would be untreated treated with dye. So just think of those wet kind of, if you left them out on the counter, they would get gross. Those are the green groups. All right, the brown groups. These are the ones that provide the carbon, which is what provides the energy for the microorganisms to break down and absorb moisture. So if you think about these as more of the dry, bulky products that decay slowly, they don't hold any moisture. So things like garden debris. So leaves or hedge prunings or teeny tiny twigs, corn, sunflower stalks, tomato vines, dead flowers. Pine needles are a really good one. Sawdust is supposed to be excellent for your compost bin, and people actually buy sawdust to put into their compost bin. Paper towel rolls, plain cardboard, paper, nothing with toxic ink on it, and then non-oily bread and pasta grains. It's important to note that with the paper towel rolls or cardboard or any kind of paper that you put in, that you tear it up into small pieces. So I use a lot of the cardboard egg cartons. Just tear them up into small pieces and those will do really good in your compost bin. Here's the list of things to avoid putting into your compost bin because one, they either attract animals, two, they can contaminate your compost, or three, it makes it really hard for them to break down. So foods like meat, bones, fish, fats, dairy, oily and cooked foods can smell and act as a magnet for animals, and foods with oils and fats actually block breakdown. Synthetic materials such as plastic and toxic inks. Plastic will not break down, and toxic inks could contaminate. Diseased plants. The plants will break down, but the disease has the potential to survive and can be transmitted to other plants if you use it for compost. We talked about chicken and horse manure is okay, but dog, cat, pig, and reptile manure avoid because they are carnivorous animals and their manure may contain parasites, pathogens, bacteria, germs, and viruses. Yard materials on the side of the road, avoid them unless you know for certain that no pesticides were used. Anything that's been treated with pesticides, just avoid using it in your compost. It could actually kill the beneficial organisms. Coal ash, those substances can also be harmful to plants. We talked about colored paper, anything with the toxic inks. And then really large branches and wood chips. Those will break down, but they take a long time to break down and they're really bulky when you're doing your turning. So just avoid those. All right, how to start. So I provided a couple different pictures of outdoor bins. You can make these as low maintenance where you're not really turning them ever, or as high maintenance where you're turning them every 3 to 4 days. So the one over here, this leaf one is an open bin, and those basically just have um, browns in them. You don't really need to attend to them as much. If you want to put green, you can just add an extra layer of brown on top of them. I personally don't have experience with doing an open bin like this, but I've seen them. They decompose, they break down pretty easily, low maintenance, but I wouldn't really put much brown or much green into them. The one on the bottom is the tumbler, and the tumbler is more of a closed bin. So these are nice because they are really neat, they keep in heat well, and they have a really fast decomposition process. The downfall for it is you're going to really be able to put a smaller quantity of brown and green in. And when they do get full, they get really heavy and they're harder to turn. I personally really like the one in the middle. Um, this is one type. The Earth Machine is another. That's the one I have. They have a top that can fasten and actually close. The Earth Machine screws on so that no one's getting into that thing. You see there's a lot of holes on the side, which adds for aeration, which is super important. And then on the bottom, you see a little door that you can kind of pull up, which I'll show you a video in a little bit. And that's where you can get your compost when it's all ready to go. These are pretty cheap. I would say $40 or $50. You can get them online usually, or you can get them at some hardware stores have them, or they can order them for you. They're usually plastic, unfortunately, but it works. It does the job. As far as indoor bins go, um, you can find a million of them online. I like the ones that have a suction lid to them and then also have a pull-out bucket so that when I want to go and dump it into my compost bin, I can just lift it by the handle and pull it out and it's not gross. Some people also have one that they can dump right into. You could see it on the bottom picture that's actually installed like a trash can. All right. So once you've decided on your bin that you want, set up your outdoor site. They say about a 4x4 site that has good drainage and is accessible during all seasons. I personally keep mine out of the sun because I think of rotting food and kind of smelly. So I have mine behind my garage where it's a little bit more shaded and it's not out in the open. Um, and then when you do find your spot, you want to place it into the ground at about 6 inches deep. So I just dig a barrier, or sorry, a border right where it's going to go so that it just fits right down there. Some people like to stake it in or put bricks around it or put a little fence around it or just build up a pile of dirt around it. You want to make sure it's into the ground, and that prevents like little creatures kind of digging right under. If it's laying right on top of the surface, it's a lot easier for them to get in. Um, Once you have dug in and you're ready to start your compost, you want to put about 6 inches on the bottom. I put little tiny twigs, or you can put dead plant stalks, and that allows for drainage and aeration. And then I also cover it with leaves, just a little bit of brown, just to get it started. All right, and then you're ready to add your ingredients. So there is a concept. I don't really follow it. Some people do. Like I said, it's pretty loose. There's not a lot of rules on what's going to work and what's not going to work. But if you want to be the most productive with your composting bin, something called lasagna. So if you think about all the different layers of lasagna and you just are repeating, that's what you're going to want to do with your green and brown layers. So if you layer a brown group, which is all your leaves and your papers and your dry products, and then layer your green group. So about every 4 to 6 inches is when you do another layer. And it's important to keep adding browns. When in doubt, add browns, and that will keep the smell down, that will reduce the moisture. I always just store a bag of brown leaves right next to my compost bin. So every time I dump in, I always just do a couple handfuls of my brown group or my leaves. And that will help keep the smell to a minimum. Actually, when I open my compost bin, I don't smell anything, which means it's a really good, healthy compost bin. Um, you can also add, if you want soil, you want to make sure to chop it into as small as you can. And you want to make sure that it is moist. So some people add water if they find that it's getting too dry. What I do is I just, when I'm about to take my kitchen bin out to my outdoor bin, I just fill it with water, and that will kind of add to the moisture of it too. So you want to turn your pile on average every 2 to 3 weeks. And that's, again, that's kind of just do it as you want to. If you're really wanting to have a productive compost bin where you're able to actively get compost after 3 to 12 months, then by all means do it every 2 to 3 weeks. You can use a shovel, a pitchfork. There's a compost crank that you can buy. I just use a pitchfork to do mine. And it does take a little bit of arm work, and it kind of is a little bit of a workout for you, but it's fun to actually see your food turning into soil. So, all right. Lastly, use it. It's called black gold, so you put all this work into it, so you might as well use it. Depending on how much you turn it, it could be ready in anywhere from 3 to 12 months. So you want to screen or sift it, and you can buy sifters. You can make them if you look online. I made mine out of chicken wire. It's not the best, but it does the job. And then you want to make sure that you use it in conjunction with your soil or mulch. So I have had plants die by using just straight compost. So you want to mix it in with other with soil. So you can use it for mulch for flower bed, add it to house plants, mix it, spread it on your lawn. If you are unsure if it's ready, you can actually take a sample of it and bag it up for a few days, put it in a Ziploc bag, and then when you open it, if it smells like ammonia, it means it's not ready. For the most part, you'll know if your compost is ready just by the size of the particles. There's also something that a lot of people do too. It's called compost tea, where you fill an old pillowcase or a cheesecloth with about a liter of compost, and you tie the top of it, and you basically steep the bag overnight. You can use a large bucket or a garbage can filled with water, and the compost tea, it ends up being nutrient rich for watering your plants and garden. All right, so here is the compost bin from my house, and you can see food scraps, paper, lots of brown, nuts, shells. It's important to note that if you have smaller or larger pieces, that you want to tear it up into smaller pieces. This is afterwards, after I turned it, and you can see all sorts of bugs and worms, and it's all mixed in together. So the more worms, the better. Now, this is after I'm opening the door. So this is about a year of compost, and you could see, look at all the worms that are kind of popping out. You could see it looks like soil. And then I also see little pieces of plastic, like the little fruit stickers or plastic that might have accidentally got put in there. I take those out, and then that might have been something larger like an avocado seed. And I just throw that back into my compost bin and give it a little bit more time. And this is the final product. So I've sifted my compost, and you can see it looks like soil. It's not perfect. There's little eggshells in there. This is what was left over in the sifter, so I'll throw that all back into my compost bin. But really, this is amazing, good compost. It doesn't smell at all. It feels like dirt. You can see a few little eggshells in there, but otherwise it's ready to go for my gardening. All right, and just a little bit of troubleshooting. If you notice that it's really smelly when you open it, you've got way too much green, it's way too wet. So easy solution, just add a lot more brown. When in doubt, add brown and turn it. If it's too dry, you've obviously got too much brown. So, um, or your pile is too small, so you'll want to add more water to it and maybe increase the size of your pile. If it's too hot, means that you don't really have enough airflow or you have way too much green. So add brown and turn. All right, that's it. Please email us if you have any questions or comments. I wish you all luck. Beware, once you start composting, it's hard to stop, especially when you see how much of it is thrown in the trash, and then to know that you can actually um, see the decomposition process yourself and know that you're making an impact on the world. If we all just started composting, it would just be huge to decrease our carbon footprint. So thanks for watching, and I hope this helps.